What if the most advanced civilization of its time simply vanished without a trace? Imagine a society flourishing with intricate palaces, stunning art, and a level of sophistication unseen in Europe for centuries, only to disappear, leaving behind more questions than answers. Join us as we uncover the captivating yet mysterious world of the Minoans, Europe's first true advanced civilization.
Welcome to our channel, the place where knowledge meets curiosity. Here, we dive deep into the wonders of history, science, culture, and mysteries that shape our world. Every video is designed to open your mind and spark your imagination. So sit back, relax, and let's begin this incredible journey together. Now we explore the enigmatic Minoans, Europe's first advanced civilization.
The first light of dawn spread across the island of Crete like a shimmering veil, revealing the contours of a land that would one day give birth to one of the world's most enigmatic civilizations. In those early moments, as the sun rose over the jagged mountains and the azure Aegean Sea, the world was still young and unshaped. The people who lived on this island had yet to carve their purpose into history, yet the land itself seemed to whisper the promise of greatness. It was here, amid fertile valleys, hidden caves, and vast coastlines, that the Minoans would rise, not through conquest, but through ingenuity, culture, and an unyielding relationship with the natural world. Their story began not with kings or wars, but with the mysteries of the sea, the rhythms of the earth, and the quiet creativity of a people destined to inspire legends. Far from the bustling city-states that would someday dominate the Greek mainland, Crete lived by its own pulse. It was a crossroads of continents, a stepping stone between Africa, Asia, and Europe. Sailors from distant shores saw its high cliffs long before they docked at its natural harbors. Traders brought with them strange goods, stories of unknown gods, and the seeds of connections that sparked new ideas among the Cretan people. Yet unlike other civilizations, the Minoans did not wall their cities, nor did they forge vast armies. Their strength lay in the sea, their artistry, and the intricate webs of trade that carried not just goods, but culture itself. Legend would later speak of King Minos, of labyrinths and monstrous minotaurs. But in these earliest days, there was no Minos and no palace. There were only scattered settlements along the coast, small farming communities inland, and clusters of artisans who shaped clay, stone, and bronze into expressions of life and divinity. Crete's early people looked to the mountains, believing them to be sacred. The caves carved deep into the stone became sanctuaries of the gods, and the rhythmic cycles of planting and harvest were rituals performed as offerings to unseen forces. The island's pulse was spiritual, and its people felt themselves part of a world that lived, breathed, and responded. As the centuries passed, Crete transformed. Villages grew into towns, trade routes expanded, and the simple shrines of shepherds and farmers evolved into organized religious centers. A new era began when monumental structures emerged, prototypes of what would someday become the legendary Minoan palaces. These early complexes were not designed for kings, but for communities. They housed workshops, storage rooms, and ceremonial spaces. Their walls were smooth and brightly painted, their courtyards open to the sky. Life here revolved not around warfare, but around celebration, craftsmanship, and the honoring of nature's rhythms. Crete's early people developed a harmony with their environment that was rare in the ancient world. They tilled the fertile soil to cultivate olives, grapes, and grains. They tamed goats and sheep, fished the abundant waters, and collected wild herbs known for healing properties. Their artisans crafted pottery whose swirling designs mirrored the seas and winds that shaped their world. Their homes were simple yet sturdy, built from stone and timber, blending seamlessly with the landscape. But above all, it was their relationship with the sea that defined them. The sea brought them prosperity, connection, and inspiration. To the Minoans, the sea was a living entity, dangerous yet benevolent, a gateway to the world beyond Crete's shores.
Generations came and went, and with each era, the Cretans grew more sophisticated. Their settlements were no longer isolated. They became nodes in an island-wide network. Boats sailed from port to port, carrying goods, news, and artisans whose skills spread across the island. Slowly, a shared culture emerged, a culture rooted in beauty, fluidity, and reverence for life. In a world where many civilizations built their identities through power and domination, Crete built its identity through creativity and cooperation. One of the most remarkable developments of this time was the emergence of writing. The early Cretans created symbols, abstract, pictorial, and rhythmic, that recorded goods, rituals, and administrative activities. Though these signs would evolve into the mysterious scripts known today as Cretan hieroglyphs and later Linear A, their earliest forms were already a testament to a developing complexity. Even before the great palaces rose, the Minoans were documenting their world, encoding their beliefs and transactions in ways their neighbors had not yet imagined. Another hallmark of this early era was the rise of craftsmanship. Potters experimented with new shapes and firing techniques. Metalworkers created bronze tools and weapons. Weavers produced intricate textiles, and sculptors carved small figurines believed to represent deities, ancestors, or forces of nature. Among these artifacts, one figure appeared again and again, a female presence, powerful and serene. Whether as a snake-handling goddess, a mountain mother, or a guardian of animals, she embodied the central role that feminine divinity played in Minoan belief. The Minoans did not construct their society around male dominance or military hierarchy. Instead, their rituals and symbolism suggested a deep reverence for fertility, renewal, and the natural world, forces they often depicted as female. But while the island thrived, it was not free from challenges. Earthquakes shook the land with terrifying force, reshaping villages and collapsing early structures. The people rebuilt, adapting their architecture to better withstand nature's fury. Storms raged across the sea, threatening the boats that connected Crete to distant lands. Piracy and sporadic violence from neighboring regions brought danger, though the Minoans rarely responded with aggression. Instead, they strengthened their fleets, improved navigation techniques, and forged alliances through trade rather than warfare. What emerged from these centuries of growth was the foundation of something extraordinary. Crete became a beacon in the ancient world, not for its armies, but for its innovation. Towns expanded into thriving urban centers. Artisans developed unique styles of pottery and frescoes, and religious life became more elaborate. The island's people were no longer merely surviving, they were flourishing. And from this flourishing would rise the first true European civilization. The turning point came when communities across Crete unified, not under a single ruler, but under shared cultural values. The earliest palaces, complex, multi-storied, labyrinthine structures began to rise in key locations: Knossos, Phaistos, Malea, and Katozakros. These palaces were unlike anything the world had seen. They had no fortifications, no barracks, no evidence of central kingship. Instead, they were centers of administration, craft production, ceremony, and storage. They were the beating hearts of Minoan life, where priests, officials, artisans, and laborers gathered in a vibrant ecosystem of culture and activity. Knossos, the largest of these early complexes, symbolized the dawn of a new age. Rising above the surrounding hills, its walls gleamed in the sunlight, decorated with vivid frescoes. Its corridors twisted and branched, forming a structural labyrinth that seemed almost alive. Courtyards echoed with the sounds of festivals, dances, and rituals, honoring the island's gods. Here, the first great leaps in Minoan organization were made. Here, the seeds of a civilization unlike any other were planted.
As the people moved through this new urban world, they carried with them the traditions of their ancestors. The mountain sanctuaries remained sacred, the caves still echoed with whispered prayers, and the sea continued to guide their destiny. Yet there was something new in the air, an energy of innovation, ambition, and unity. The Minoans were becoming a force not through conquest, but through creativity. Their artisans were shaping masterpieces, their merchants were forging global connections, and their priests were guiding a spiritual life deeply attuned to nature. The birth of Minoan civilization was not sudden. It was a slow, graceful unfolding, a dance of culture, environment, and human ingenuity. From humble settlements grew palaces. From simple rituals grew sophisticated ceremonies. From local trade grew international influence. And through it all, the Minoans maintained a harmony with their world that set them apart from their contemporaries. By the time the first great palaces reached their full glory, Crete had transformed. The island was now a center of innovation, art, and spirituality. Its people had developed maritime technologies that allowed them to dominate Aegean trade. Their writing system, though not yet fully deciphered today, recorded their increasingly complex administration. Their workshops produced pottery, metalwork, and frescoes unmatched in beauty. And their religious beliefs, fluid, symbolic, and reverent, infused every aspect of life. As the sun set over Crete at the end of this transformative era, the island stood on the brink of greatness. The next centuries would bring unprecedented prosperity, artistic brilliance, and influence that stretched across the Mediterranean. Yet, they would also bring challenges that tested the resilience of the Minoans and reshaped their world forever. But for now, Crete was rising, its destiny unfolding like the petals of a flower opening toward the sun. Europe's first advanced civilization had taken its first steps, and the world would never be the same.
The transformation of Crete from a cluster of rural settlements into a dazzling network of palatial centers did not happen overnight. It came through decades of experimentation, generations of architectural refinement, and an evolving sense of identity that bound the island's communities together. As the early Bronze Age gave way to the Middle Bronze Age, the Minoans experienced a cultural blossoming unmatched in contemporary Europe. Across the island, the rhythm of daily life shifted from purely agricultural cycles to complex urban routines dictated by administration, trade, ritual, and craftsmanship. The palaces, with their sprawling courtyards, storerooms, workshops, and fresco-lined corridors, stood as monumental symbols of this shift, a physical embodiment of the Minoan worldview. Knossos, the most imposing of these centers, was a marvel of innovation. Built upon gentle slopes overlooking fertile plains, it commanded both the land and the sea, acting as a hub for the distribution of grain, oil, wine, wool, and crafted goods. The palace's construction was unlike anything Europe had ever seen. Its architects favored open courts that allowed sunlight to illuminate ceremonial gatherings. They built multi-story complexes with staircases that wound around columns painted in vibrant reds and blacks.
hallways twisted and intersected in a pattern so intricate that later Greek storytellers imagined the structure as the mythical labyrinth. Yet for the Minoans, the complexity served practical purposes. Rooms were arranged to maximize airflow, coolness, storage efficiency, and ease of movement for workers, officials, and ritual participants. Within Knossos, the air often smelled of fresh plaster, olive oil, and the faint aroma of incense burned during daily ceremonies. Scribes sat hunched over clay tablets, pressing symbols of linear A into the wet surface to record everything from offerings to inventories. Artisans hammered bronze blades, shaped pottery, and carved ivory imported from the Levant. Weavers dyed wool in shades of scarlet and deep blue, their hands moving swiftly as they produced the patterned textiles that would travel to distant lands. Everywhere, life pulsed with activity, purpose, and creativity. But Knossos was not alone. Phaistos, situated on a broad plain in southern Crete, rivaled it in splendor. From its terraces, one could see fertile fields stretching to the sea, and on clear days, Mount Ida rising in majestic silhouette. The palace at Phaistos was famed for its elegant central court, where festivals unfolded beneath the Mediterranean sun. It was here, according to archaeologists, that one of the most mysterious artifacts in Minoan history was created: the Phaistos disc, a clay object stamped with spiraling symbols whose meaning remains unknown. Though no definitive interpretation exists, many scholars believe it may have been a ritual item, a hymn, or perhaps a record of a ceremonial event. Whatever its purpose, the disc stands as a testament to the intellectual and artistic ambition that flourished within the palace.
Mallia, another major palace, anchored the northern coastline. It was a center of maritime activity, its harbors receiving ships from Cyprus, the Levant, Egypt, and the Greek mainland. The palace complex was richly adorned with colorful frescoes depicting sacred rituals, intricate patterns, and scenes of the natural world. Mallia was renowned for its goldsmiths, who produced exquisite jewelry fashioned from gold, electro, and semi-precious stones. Some of these pieces would later be discovered in tombs, their artistry so refined that they baffled early archaeologists who struggled to believe such craftsmanship had existed millennia ago. To the east, the palace of Kato-Zakros faced outward toward the wider Mediterranean. More exposed than its counterparts, it stood as Crete's gateway to the Eastern world. Merchants here dealt in copper from Cyprus, exotic spices from the Near East, and rare goods brought from as far as Egypt's Nile Delta. The palace's storerooms held amphorae filled with oil and wine, alongside imported luxury goods that demonstrated Crete's expansive trade network. The sea outside Zakros was both a highway and a guardian. Its waters shimmered with the endless movement of vessels that carried the essence of Minoan prosperity. Despite their grandeur, the palaces were not royal residences in the manner of later Greek or Near Eastern kingdoms. There is no clear evidence of monarchs, dynasties, or militaristic rulers dominating the Minoan world. Instead, the palaces appear to have functioned as communal, administrative, and ceremonial centers. Priests, priestesses, scribes, artisans, and officials all played vital roles in maintaining the smooth functioning of daily life. At the heart of this structure was the Minoan religious sphere, which centered on sacred rituals performed both within the palaces and in sacred sanctuaries scattered across the island. Religion was deeply woven into the fabric of Minoan society. The natural world, mountains, caves, trees, and animals held profound spiritual significance. The Minoan goddess, whose identity remains elusive but unmistakably powerful, appeared in many forms, as the mistress of animals, as the mountain mother, or as a snake-bearing deity of fertility and renewal. She embodied life, death, and rebirth, reflecting the cycles of the seasons and the rhythms of agricultural life. Religious rituals dedicated to her were conducted in open courtyards, mountaintop shrines, and sacred caves.
Processions, dances, and offerings were integral to these ceremonies, which brought together communities in acts of collective reverence. One of the most iconic elements of Minoan ritual life was the bull. Bulls symbolized strength, fertility, and the raw power of nature. Frescoes from Knossos and other sites depict scenes of bull leaping, athletic spectacles in which young men and women vaulted over charging bulls in feats of agility and daring. Whether these events were religious ceremonies, athletic competitions, or symbolic performances remains debated, but their importance to Minoan identity is unmistakable. The grace and courage required for bull leaping mirrored the Minoans' belief in harmony with nature, emphasizing movement, balance, and the beauty of the human body in motion.
The palaces, with all their splendor, stood as epicenters of this cultural world. They coordinated trade across the Mediterranean, maintained storage facilities for agricultural surpluses, and organized craft production. Their influence extended across Crete, where smaller towns and rural settlements operated in close connection with these administrative hubs. Roads were built to facilitate travel between palaces and interior villages. Coastal ports expanded to accommodate heavier trade, and new technologies emerged as Minoan engineers improved shipbuilding techniques, allowing vessels to travel farther and carry more cargo. The island thrived. Farmers prospered from fertile lands. Herders tended well-managed flocks. Merchants grew wealthy through seafaring trade, and artisans gained prestige for their masterful creations. The Minoans became renowned far beyond their shores. Egyptian frescoes depict Minoan ambassadors bearing gifts, their hairstyles and garments distinct from all other visitors. On the mainland of Greece, in Anatolia, and across the Levant, Minoan goods were prized for their beauty and functionality. Yet while the Minoan palaces symbolized unity and prosperity, they also introduced vulnerabilities. Their interdependence meant that challenges affecting one palace could ripple across the island. Natural disasters, particularly earthquakes, which frequently shook Crete, posed constant threats. Each time a palace suffered damage, the Minoans rebuilt, often improving upon previous architectural designs. These cycles of destruction and reconstruction would come to define the resilience of Minoan society, but they also foreshadowed the fragility of the complex system they had created. Within the palatial complexes, daily life unfolded with a rhythm that balanced routine with ceremony. At dawn, priests performed rituals in shrines adorned with frescoes of sacred symbols. Scribes gathered in administrative rooms to document inventories and offerings. Artisans filled workshops with the sounds of chisels, hammers, and spinning wheels. Traders returned from sea voyages with news of distant lands and the goods they had acquired. Children played in courtyard shadows, learning the traditions that would one day shape their roles in society. As the sun climbed high over Crete, shadows of columns stretched across palace floors, creating patterns that shifted with the movement of the day. In the afternoons, sometimes processions unfolded across palace courtyards. Men and women dressed in elaborate garments, embroidered with colorful patterns, walked in solemn lines carrying offerings, jars of oil, baskets of grain, or symbolic objects crafted for the gods. Their presence reflected a society in which spiritual life was interwoven with daily activity, where every action, whether planting seeds, crafting pottery, or preparing a feast, held ritual significance. Evenings in the palaces were filled with the hum of conversation, music, and the flickering light of oil lamps. Musicians played lyres, pipes, and percussion instruments, filling the air with melodies that carried across the walls of the palace. Dancers performed in flowing garments, their movements echoing the fluidity seen in Minoan art.
Storytellers recounted tales of the gods, the sea, and the ancestral spirits who watched over the island. These nights strengthened the bonds between communities and reinforced the shared identity that connected all Minoans, from palace officials to rural farmers. By the height of the palace era, Crete had become a beacon of innovation, beauty, and prosperity in the ancient world. The island stood at the cultural crossroads of continents, drawing influence from Egypt, Anatolia, and the Near East, while maintaining a uniquely Minoan identity. Their civilization, built not on warfare but on creativity and commerce, demonstrated an alternative model of power, one grounded in culture rather than conquest. Little did they know that the challenges ahead would test their unity and ingenuity in ways they could not yet imagine. Earthquakes, foreign influences, and perhaps even internal tensions would shape the future of the Minoan world. But for now, the palaces shone like jewels across the island, their walls telling stories of a people who had mastered harmony with their environment and created a civilization whose beauty would echo across millennia.
The centuries that followed the establishment of the great palaces ushered in a period that scholars often describe as the Minoan Golden Age. During this era, roughly corresponding to the height of the Middle Bronze Age and the flourishing of the early Late Bronze Age, Crete reached a zenith of artistic brilliance, economic prosperity, and cultural sophistication that was unparalleled in Europe. It was a time when the island's influence extended far beyond its shores, when the craftsmanship of Minoan artisans became a hallmark of elegance across the Mediterranean, and when the spiritual life of the Minoans reached new heights of complexity and symbolism. If earlier generations had laid the foundations, the people of this era adorned those foundations with the finest achievements their civilization had ever known. Daily life in the palaces and surrounding towns was marked by a sense of abundance and order. Agricultural production thrived thanks to well-managed fields of barley, emmer wheat, olives, and grapes. Terraced farming allowed the Minoans to cultivate the mountainous terrain, while irrigation techniques ensured steady yields even during dry seasons. Herds of sheep and goats provided wool, milk, and meat, and beekeeping became a respected craft as honey grew in importance, both as a sweetener and a ritual offering. The Minoan diet reflected the richness of their environment. Fruits such as figs and pomegranates, vegetables like lentils and chickpeas, freshly caught fish, and wine pressed from the vineyards surrounding their settlements. Meals were not merely sources of sustenance, they were opportunities for families to gather, for communities to celebrate festivals, and for rituals to unfold. Central to the Golden Age was the flourishing of Minoan art. Frescoes covered the walls of palaces, villas, and even some modest homes, illustrating a world filled with movement, color, and elegance. Unlike many contemporary cultures that favored rigid forms and solemn subjects, Minoan artists depicted scenes of joy, nature, and ritual with remarkable fluidity. Dolphins leapt across the blue surfaces of chamber walls. Maidens danced in flowing white garments. Flowers blossomed in vivid reds and yellows, and bull leapers soared over the backs of charging bulls in graceful arcs. These images reflected not only artistic mastery, but also a worldview that celebrated life, nature, and harmony. There was no obsession with war, no glorification of conquest, only a deep appreciation for the beauty of existence.
Trade formed the backbone of Minoan prosperity during the Golden Age. The island's strategic position in the eastern Mediterranean allowed its merchants to establish a network of routes that connected Crete with Cyprus, Anatolia, Egypt, the Levant, and mainland Greece. Minoan ships, sleek and expertly designed, carried goods across long distances.
These vessels, propelled by skilled rowers and guided by captains who understood the patterns of wind and current, were marvels of engineering. Their prows often featured decorative motifs, spirals, marine creatures, or sacred symbols that hinted at the blend of artistry and practicality that defined Minoan culture. Among the goods traded were not only manufactured items like pottery and textiles, but also raw materials essential to Minoan industries. Copper from Cyprus and tin from distant lands allowed Minoan metalworkers to produce bronze tools, weapons, and ceremonial objects. Precious stones such as carnelian, lapis lazuli, and amethyst arrived from far beyond the Aegean, finding their way into jewelry worn by the island's elite. In return, Minoans exported olive oil, wine, wool, and finished crafts that carried the distinct mark of Cretan artistry. This continuous movement of goods also facilitated the exchange of ideas, technologies, and religious concepts, enriching Minoan society and fostering the cosmopolitan atmosphere that characterized their cities. Religious life during the Golden Age reached a pinnacle of symbolism and ritual expression. The goddess remained at the center of Minoan spirituality, but the forms in which she appeared grew increasingly diverse and complex. Some frescoes depict her standing atop mountains, surrounded by animals that seem to worship her presence. Others show her presiding over ceremonies conducted in palace courtyards or open-air sanctuaries. The snake goddess figurines, with their bare breasts and coiling serpents held in raised arms, hinted at an intimate connection between femininity, fertility, and the regenerative power of nature. These symbols were not limited to elite rituals. They permeated everyday life, appearing in household shrines, jewelry, and pottery. The sacred bull maintained its central role in Minoan ritual life. The bull-leaping ceremonies grew more elaborate during this era, performed not only in palatial courts, but possibly also in special arenas designed to host such events. The precise nature of bull leaping remains debated, but the artistry of the surviving frescoes suggests it involved a combination of athleticism, training, and ritual significance rather than sheer improvisation. Male and female participants took part, reflecting the Minoan tendency toward gender balance in ceremonial roles. Whether the act was intended as a display of human mastery over nature, a symbolic dance with divine forces, or a rite of passage, it captivated the imagination of all who witnessed it.
Minoan writing systems also evolved during this period. Linear A, the script used primarily for administrative purposes, became more standardized as scribes recorded increasingly complex transactions. The script appears on clay tablets, religious votives, stone libation vessels, and even gold rings. Meticulous record-keeping reflected not authoritarian control, but an intricate web of cooperation, where the palaces served as hubs of distribution and regulation. As the Golden Age progressed, Minoan architecture continued to advance. Buildings became more sophisticated, both structurally and aesthetically. Architects incorporated advanced drainage systems, light wells, and ventilation shafts into their designs, creating interior spaces that remained cool even during the intense Mediterranean summers. Colored plaster floors, elaborately carved wooden elements, and columned porticos added elegance to residential and ceremonial spaces alike. Villas in rural areas mirrored the palatial style, though on a smaller scale, demonstrating the reach of Minoan cultural norms beyond urban centers. The social structure of Minoan Crete reflected the fluid and interconnected nature of their civilization. While there were distinctions between elites, artisans, farmers, and laborers, the absence of militaristic imagery or monumental royal tombs suggests a society that valued cooperation over domination.
Women played significant roles not only in households, but also in rituals, ceremonies, and possibly even administrative functions. Artistic depictions show women participating in processions, attending banquets, and performing sacred duties, activities often restricted to men in contemporary cultures. This visibility of women in Minoan art has led many scholars to propose that the society was relatively egalitarian compared to its neighbors, though the exact nature of gender dynamics remains open to interpretation. The harmony that defined Minoan society extended to its relationship with the natural world. The Minoans viewed their environment not as a resource to exploit, but as a living partner in their existence. Trees were treated with reverence, mountains were seen as sacred abodes of the divine, and the sea was both a provider and a path to discovery. This respectful relationship manifested in religious practices that honored nature's cycles and in artistic motifs that celebrated flora and fauna. The Minoan worldview emphasized balance, movement, and interconnectedness, a philosophy reflected in everything from their rituals to their everyday objects.
During this period of prosperity, interactions with other civilizations intensified. Egyptian records from the reigns of pharaohs such as Thutmose III depict Keftiu, believed to refer to the Minoans, presenting offerings of pottery, metalwork, and textiles. These diplomatic exchanges not only strengthened trade relationships, but also allowed the Minoans to influence and be influenced by one of the world's greatest civilizations. Yet despite these contacts, the Minoans retained their distinct identity. Their art, architecture, and religious practices remained unmistakably Cretan, shaped by the island's unique geography, history, and sensibilities. The Golden Age brought not only prosperity, but also a sense of cultural confidence. Minoan shipbuilders constructed larger and more technologically advanced vessels, capable of longer voyages. Minoan artisans pushed the limits of their craft, producing objects of unparalleled elegance. The palaces continued to expand, incorporating new wings, courts, and storage facilities. Festivals grew in scale, drawing participants from across the island and possibly from overseas communities influenced by Minoan culture. Yet beneath the outward appearance of stability, subtle shifts were occurring. The very interconnectedness that had driven Minoan prosperity also introduced new pressures. Dependence on foreign trade made the island vulnerable to disruptions far beyond its control. Growing contact with mainland Greece brought cultural exchange, but also the seeds of future rivalry. Natural disasters remained an ever-present threat, their unpredictability capable of undoing centuries of achievement in a single tremor. But these tensions remained faint echoes in the background of what was, by all measures, an extraordinary era. For the people of Crete, life continued in vibrant harmony. Children grew up surrounded by art and ritual. Traders returned from voyages with tales of distant lands. Artisans created beauty from raw materials, and priests guided the spiritual life of communities bound together by shared values and symbols. The Golden Age represented the height of Minoan cultural achievement, a time when the island stood radiant in the Mediterranean world. Though the future held upheavals that would reshape the island's destiny, the legacy of the Golden Age would endure for millennia. Its art would later inspire Greek aesthetics, its symbols would echo in myth, and its achievements would remain embedded in the archaeological record as evidence of a civilization that understood beauty, harmony, and connectivity in ways that few others did. For now, the island glittered beneath the Mediterranean sun, prosperous and united, unaware that the forces of nature and history were slowly gathering beyond the horizon.
The Palace of Knossos rose from the heart of Crete like a living monument to imagination, power, and ancient skill.
To travelers approaching from the sea, it seemed less like a fortress and more like a city within a city. Terraced levels, vivid red columns, open courtyards and murals glowing beneath the Mediterranean sun. Even from afar, its scale felt impossible, as though it were built not by mortal hands, but by some forgotten race of giants. Yet, as one drew closer, the palace revealed itself not as a monument to conquest, but as an intricate labyrinth of life, commerce, ritual, and creativity. Every wall, every painted doorway, every shadowed corridor pulsed with the spirit of the Minoans, Europe's first advanced civilization. And for those who stepped through its gates, the world seemed to shift, as if they had entered a realm where time flowed differently, slower, richer, more deliberate, shaped not by war or fear, but by artistry, harmony, and sacred mystery. Knossos did not resemble the palaces of later civilizations. There were no towering defensive walls, no iron gates, no barracks filled with soldiers. The Minoans had built their world with confidence, believing that their island home, surrounded by seas they mastered through unmatched naval skill, would protect them from foreign threats. Instead of fortifications, they built wide courtyards, fresco-covered halls, and sprawling wings filled with storerooms, workshops, shrines, and ceremonial chambers. The architecture breathed openness, as though welcoming both sunlight and strangers. It was a palace meant not for war, but for living, celebrating, governing, and dreaming. Inside, the palace felt like a universe constantly in motion. At dawn, its corridors filled with a soft golden glow as sunlight poured through carefully aligned windows and light wells. Priests and priestesses moved quietly through sacred rooms, lighting lamps filled with fragrant olive oil that perfumed the air. Scribes hurried across halls with clay tablets inscribed in linear A, symbols elegant yet mysterious, destined to remain undeciphered for millennia. Craftsmen awakened their workshops with the sound of metal striking metal, the hum of potters' wheels, the rhythmic thump of weavers' looms. Farmers approached the palace with baskets of offerings, grain, figs, olives, honey, while shepherds delivered wool to storerooms where it would soon be spun into the vibrant textiles that clothed nobles and dancers. But the heartbeat of Knossos lay in the great central courtyard, a vast open space surrounded by columns painted in deep crimsons and rich blacks. Here the people gathered, celebrated, traded, and performed rituals that defined Minoan identity. On festival days, the courtyard became a place of exhilaration, music echoing from every wall, drums rolling like thunder, and flutes singing above the clamor. Crowds assembled to witness the iconic bull leaping ceremonies, rituals that blended athletic prowess with spiritual devotion. The bull was sacred, powerful, a symbol of the earth's primal energy. When it charged across the courtyard, its muscles rippling like a storm at sea, the leaper ran to meet it head-on. With perfect timing, the athlete seized its horns, used the animal's momentum, and flipped through the air in a breathtaking arc before landing gracefully behind it. The crowd erupted in cheers, praises rising like incense to the sky. To the Minoans, these ceremonies were more than sport. They embodied their faith in balance, the eternal dance between humans and the natural forces that govern the world. To leap over a charging bull was to show unity with chaos, to transform danger into beauty. It was a declaration that life was not meant to be feared, but embraced with courage, skill, and reverence for the divine.
Surrounding the courtyard rose the palace's richly decorated wings. Frescoes covered nearly every wall, bringing the palace alive with imagery of dolphins, lilies, hunting scenes, dancers, priestesses, and mythic creatures. The colors were striking, bright blues that mirrored the sea, reds like freshly broken clay, warm yellows drawn from natural earth pigments. These were not merely decorative pieces, but visual narratives that reflected the values, dreams, and cosmology of the Minoans. To walk through Knossos was to walk through a gallery of living stories. The residential quarters revealed a surprising sophistication. Multi-level rooms contained drainage systems, running water channels, and stone bathtubs that suggested a deep concern for hygiene and comfort. Light wells and ventilation shafts ensured fresh air and illumination, a marvel of ancient engineering. Even the arrangement of rooms showed intentionality. Private chambers placed near family spaces, storage rooms positioned strategically near administrative areas, and ceremonial wings aligned with astronomical patterns. Knossos was a masterpiece of planning, its complexity rivaling that of any later civilization. In contrast to the openness of the upper levels, the deeper chambers of the palace shrouded themselves in shadows and mystery. Some rooms were small and windowless, their walls carved with symbols whose meanings had long vanished. Others contained altars stained with traces of offerings, grains, oils, animal bones, evidence of rituals carried out over centuries. Among these sacred spaces stood the throne room, a modest chamber filled with profound significance. Its gypsum throne, carved with intricate details, rested against a wall adorned with frescoes depicting griffins, mythical guardians associated with divine authority. The room's central basin suggested rites of purification or communal ceremony. Even in silence, the throne room felt alive, as though the whispers of long-forgotten priestesses lingered in the air. Another sacred space, the Hall of the Double Axes, held some of the most enigmatic symbols of Minoan culture. The labrys, or double axe, appeared carved into walls and pillars, painted on frescoes, and engraved on stone altars. It represented power, fertility, balance, and the cycles of nature. To the Minoans, the labrys was not a weapon, but a spiritual emblem, a reminder of the dual forces that shaped the world: creation and destruction, male and female, earth and sky. Across the palace, symbols of the sacred serpent appeared frequently, often held by priestesses in ritual imagery. The serpent, shedding its skin, symbolized transformation, renewal, and the unseen forces beneath the world. Paired with the dove, symbol of peace and spiritual ascent, it formed a harmonious duality at the heart of Minoan belief. The influence of priestesses in Knossos was unmistakable. They presided over ceremonies, guided festivals, interpreted omens, and maintained the rituals that connected the Minoans to their gods. Their garments, layered skirts, embroidered belts, and bodices that revealed the chest as a sign of spiritual openness, set them apart as figures of authority. They moved through the palace like flowing water, serene yet powerful, their presence commanding respect and reverence. To them, the palace was not merely a political center, it was a living temple, a bridge between the mortal realm and the divine.
Beyond the palace walls, the surrounding city thrived under its influence. Houses lined winding streets, their roofs painted white to reflect the sun. Workshops filled the air with the sound of industry. Metalworkers forging bronze blades and tools. Artisans crafting jewelry from gold and gemstones. Potters shaping vessels adorned with sea creatures. Markets bustled with activity. Merchants calling out prices for fresh fruits, olives, fish, herbs, and spices. Children played in open spaces, their laughter echoing against sun-baked stone. Trade was the lifeblood of the Minoan world. Ships sailed from Crete to Egypt, Cyprus, the Levant, and the Aegean Islands, carrying pottery, textiles, metalwork, and precious oils. In return, they brought exotic goods, papyrus, ivory, obsidian, and rare spices. Through this exchange, the Minoans absorbed foreign influences while spreading their own culture far beyond their shores.
The Palace of Knossos served as the administrative heart of this vast network, ensuring the flow of goods, recording transactions, and distributing resources across the island. Yet even as Knossos flourished, subtle changes stirred in the world beyond. Earth tremors shook the island more frequently, rattling storerooms and cracking frescoes. The great volcano on the nearby island of Thera rumbled ominously, sending dark plumes into the sky. Traders brought news of rising powers in the east, empires built on conquest rather than diplomacy. Still, the Minoans trusted their gods, their navy, and the sea itself to protect them. For generations, this belief had held true. Inside the palace, life continued in a rhythm almost ritualistic. Each morning, musicians gathered in the courtyards, their lyres and pipes weaving melodies that drifted through the corridors. Each evening, oil lamps cast flickering shadows across painted walls, bringing the figures in the frescoes to life, as though they were dancing in the soft glow. Families shared meals, telling stories of ancestors and heroes. Astronomers studied the stars from terraces, charting celestial patterns to understand the seasons and festivals. The palace breathed, changed, adapted, yet remained anchored in its ancient identity. But beneath its vibrant surface lay secrets. Hidden chambers locked away objects whose purposes were long forgotten. Ritual sites remained sealed after centuries of use. Symbols appeared in repeating patterns, hinting at a mythology never written down. And somewhere beneath the palace, according to later legend, stretched the labyrinth itself, a maze so complex that none could escape it without guidance. Though no half-man, half-bull monster lurked within, the metaphor of the labyrinth reflected the palace's intricate design and the layered complexity of Minoan life. Knossos stood at the height of its power, a shining example of peace, prosperity, and cultural brilliance. But like all great civilizations, it stood on the edge of forces it could not control. Nature had been patient, but its silence would not last forever.
The island of Thera, known to later ages as Santorini, had always been a place of quiet power. Its steep caldera walls, carved from ancient eruptions, stood like silent guardians around a sea-filled crater, shimmering with deceptive tranquility. For centuries, the people of the Minoan world visited Thera for trade, festivals, and worship. Its towns, Akrotiri being the most remarkable, were adorned with colorful frescoes, graceful houses, paved streets, and bustling markets that echoed the sophistication of Crete itself. To many travelers, Thera felt like a younger sibling of Knossos, bright and full of promise. Few could imagine that beneath its beauty slept a force capable of reshaping the world. In the years before the catastrophe, subtle signs began to appear, though most went unnoticed. Fishermen reported unusual warmth in the waters near the island. Occasional tremors shook the ground, rattling jars on shelves and causing dust to drift from ceilings. Birds migrated earlier or later than usual. Even the animals seemed restless, as though sensing a disturbance too deep and ancient for human understanding. But the Minoans, accustomed to occasional earthquakes in their volcanic homeland, brushed aside these warnings. They had lived for generations under the shadow of mountains that breathed smoke and shook the earth. To them, nature was not an enemy, but a force that demanded respect, ritual, and balance. As long as they honored the gods, all would remain in harmony. But harmony was already unraveling beneath the sea. Deep within the magma chambers beneath Thera, enormous pressure had been building for centuries. Molten rock churned slowly, gases accumulated, and fissures stretched like invisible wounds. At first, these signs were subtle, but soon the island felt the tension growing. Farmers working in the terraced vineyards noticed the soil warming.
Springs that once ran clear grew cloudy. The smell of sulfur drifted through the air, faint yet unmistakable. Still, life continued. Ships arrived in Thera's harbors, loaded with goods from Knossos and beyond. Craftsmen in Akrotiri painted vibrant frescoes of swallows, dolphins, and festivals, unaware that their beautiful city would soon be frozen in time beneath layers of volcanic ash. Then the tremors grew stronger. The first significant earthquake struck without warning. It came at dawn, a deep rumbling that rolled across the island like the roar of a waking giant. Buildings swayed, jars toppled, and frightened animals bolted through the streets. People rushed from their homes, gathering in open spaces as aftershocks shook the ground again and again. In Crete, far across the sea, the impact was equally felt. At Knossos, murals cracked along their edges, staircases trembled, and the palace's vast storerooms rattled as hundreds of clay vessels shattered at once. Still, the damage, though frightening, did not seem catastrophic. The Minoans began repairing collapsed walls, clearing debris, and restoring the palace's order with admirable resilience. But beneath Thera, the magma chamber continued to swell. A second earthquake struck weeks later, more violent than the first. Cracks opened along roads, parts of cliffs tumbled into the sea. Steam began rising from vents near the caldera. At night, a faint red glow sometimes pulsed from the crater, reflected eerily in the waters below. By now, the people of Thera understood that something was terribly wrong. Some families, sensing the danger, began to flee the island, carrying what belongings they could. Others stayed, whether out of loyalty, disbelief, or the hope that the gods would calm the restless earth.
In Knossos, the priestesses gathered to interpret omens. They saw patterns in the stars, changes in the winds, shifts in the behavior of sacred animals. The serpent, symbol of renewal, seemed agitated during rituals. Lamps flickered unpredictably in the sanctuaries. The great double-axe symbols carved into the palace walls, once reassuring emblems of balance, seemed ominous in the trembling light. Yet the leaders of Crete had no clear solutions. Their world had faced earthquakes before, and always endured. But the signs emanating from Thera no longer felt ordinary. Something unprecedented was approaching, a force greater than ritual, politics, or human understanding. And then, one morning, the mountain exploded. To those who witnessed the first eruption, the moment was beyond comprehension. The summit of Thera split open with a deafening roar, sending a column of ash, rock, and fire shooting upward with unimaginable force. The sky darkened instantly, as though night had fallen in the middle of the day. Lightning crackled within the ash cloud, illuminating it from within like a monstrous pillar stretching toward the heavens. The sound was so immense that people fell to their knees, covering their ears in terror. The explosion could be heard across the Aegean, reaching Crete within minutes. For hours the volcano raged, spewing ash that rained down on nearby islands. Boats caught in the ashfall struggled to stay afloat as the sea turned thick and black. The people of Akrotiri fled in chaos, but many never reached safety. Buildings collapsed beneath falling debris. Streets disappeared beneath layers of ash. Fires erupted across the city as flaming stones ignited rooftops. Those who survived the initial blast watched in horror as the island seemed to tear itself apart. But this was only the beginning. The eruption entered its most devastating phase as the caldera collapsed inward. The sea rushed into the gaping void with tremendous force, creating explosions of steam and rock that shattered the island further.
Enormous pyroclastic flows, clouds of superheated ash and gas swept across the landscape at deadly speeds, burying everything in their path. Whole towns vanished in an instant. The forested slopes of Thera were incinerated. The once thriving city of Akrotiri was entombed, preserved beneath ash for thousands of years, a silent witness to the moment its world ended. And then came the wave. The collapse of the caldera triggered a colossal tsunami that radiated outward across the sea like a wall of destruction. In Crete, fishermen noticed the water receding from the shoreline far beyond its usual limit, exposing rocks and seaweed never seen before. Moments later, the ocean returned with terrifying force. Waves as tall as palace walls crashed into coastal settlements, demolishing homes, toppling ships, and dragging entire neighborhoods into the sea. Harbors that had once been vibrant centers of trade were reduced to shattered ruins. Even inland regions felt the impact as floodwaters swept through valleys and fields, leaving devastation in their wake. In Knossos itself, though situated further from the coast, was not spared. The palace shook violently as aftershocks followed the main eruption. Portions of buildings collapsed. Paintings fell from walls. Storerooms cracked open, spilling their contents across the floors. Sacred altars toppled. The once proud columns of the palace trembled as if bowing under the weight of nature's fury. People fled into the courtyards, huddling together, staring at the darkened sky. Ash carried by winds from Thera began to fall across the island, coating everything in a fine gray powder. Daylight dimmed. For weeks, the sun appeared as a faint red disk behind a veil of drifting ash. In the aftermath of the eruption, nothing felt the same.
The seas were unpredictable, storms frequent, and the climate cooled. Crops failed in certain regions, leading to shortages. Trade suffered as ships were destroyed and harbors ruined. Communities along the coast struggled to rebuild, their resources depleted. The Minoans, who had long viewed the sea as a protector, now feared its power. Priests and priestesses performed rituals to appease the gods, yet many wondered whether the gods themselves were angry, or whether some greater cosmic force had shifted beyond mortal comprehension. Knossos faced challenges it had never known before. While its walls still stood, the palace no longer felt invincible. Cracks in its structure mirrored the cracks forming in the society around it. Some blamed the priesthood for failing to foresee the disaster. Others questioned whether the old ways still held meaning. Yet amid this uncertainty, the Minoans refused to surrender. They repaired damaged buildings, restored storerooms, rebuilt ships, and replanted fields. Their resilience was remarkable, but the shadow of Thera lingered. The eruption had not merely shaken the earth, it had altered destiny itself. The once flourishing economy became fragile. Foreign powers, sensing weakness, grew bolder. Raiders from the mainland tested the Minoan navy. The Mycenaeans, rising in strength, watched Crete with growing interest. For the first time in centuries, the Minoans faced the possibility that their island might not remain the peaceful heart of the Aegean forever. And yet, in the midst of all this hardship, the people of Knossos held on to hope. They continued their rituals, celebrated their festivals, and honored their gods with unwavering devotion. They believed that as long as the palace stood, and as long as they upheld the balance between the sacred and the mortal, their civilization would endure. The ash-covered frescoes were cleaned, the bull-leaping ceremonies resumed, and trade routes slowly reopened. But beneath the surface, the world had changed irrevocably. What had been an era of expansion and brilliance was transforming into a time of struggle, adaptation, and encroaching darkness.
The once unshakable confidence of the Minoans had been replaced by a quiet, persistent fear. And although they did not yet fully understand it, the eruption of Thera had set into motion events that would lead to the greatest turning point in their history. Thera had not merely erupted, it had altered destiny itself.
The morning mist lay heavy over the Cretan highlands as the sun rose behind Mount Juctus, the sacred mountain where generations of Minoan priests claimed to commune with the divine. Eros stood at the entrance of a narrow, serpentine path that cut upward along the rocky slope, his sandals scraping against shards of limestone. The mountain wind carried the scent of thyme and wild sage, and somewhere above him, hidden behind the veils of fog, were the colossal ruins of the ancient Temple of Light and Shadow, a place he had only heard about in hushed whispers. Stories told of secret rites, luminous altars, and the cryptic knowledge guarded by high priestesses whose wisdom guided Minoan kings and seafarers. Even in the present timeline of the story, long after the fall of Knossos, the temple remained a place of power, too dangerous to seek without purpose. Eros had a purpose. The clay tablet he carried, etched with symbols that no scholar in the capital could decipher, seemed to pulse with a faint warmth against his chest. He had uncovered it beneath the ruins of an abandoned villa near Phaistos, lodged beneath a collapsed fresco depicting a goddess with serpents coiled around her arms. He remembered the moment clearly, the eerie silence, the dust swirling in the shaft of sunlight, and the feeling that the tablet was waiting for him. Something in its symbols called him toward this mountain, toward the lost sanctuary where priests once shaped the fate of Europe's first advanced civilization. As Eros climbed higher, the fog thinned, revealing glimpses of the ancient stone staircase carved directly into the mountainside. Each step bore grooves worn by centuries of pilgrim feet. Though the civilization that built it had vanished in fire and wave, the stones still felt alive, charged with the memory of rituals that once resonated through these peaks. When he reached a plateau, Eros paused, catching his breath as the vast panorama of the valley unfurled below him. He could see olive groves stretching like a green mosaic, faint outlines of distant settlements, and far to the north, the shimmering line of the Aegean Sea. The world felt impossibly ancient from this vantage, as though time itself thinned like the morning clouds. Ahead of him stood the first visible remains of the Temple of Light and Shadow. Two massive pillars rising like weathered sentinels, their surface etched with spirals, double axes, and flowing lines symbolizing water and wind. These were unmistakably Minoan, but their scale exceeded anything Eros had seen in the palaces. They seemed built to frame the sky rather than support a roof. As he stepped between them, a low hum filled the air, making the hairs on his arms rise. It felt like a resonance, a forgotten harmonic tone triggered by the movement of wind through the hollow chambers beneath the mountain. He entered a long passageway cut into the rock itself. The darkness thickened instantly, swallowing the daylight behind him. Eros reached for the oil lamp he carried, striking a spark against the wick until a warm golden glow filled the tunnel. The walls shone with mineral crystals embedded in the rock, glimmering like scattered stars. But more astonishing were the carvings, intricate scenes of rituals, offerings, dancers, and spiraling designs that suggested celestial alignments. These were not mere decorations, they were records of knowledge encoded through sacred geometry.
Eros recognized the symbols from the clay tablet, the same looping patterns, the same crescent-like glyphs. The discovery made his pulse quicken. He followed the symbols deeper into the tunnel, until the rock path widened into a vast subterranean chamber. The ceiling vanished into darkness, supported by columns of stone that seemed almost too perfectly shaped to be natural. At the center of the chamber lay a raised platform surrounded by shallow channels carved into the floor. When Eros extended his lamp, he saw that the channels were arranged in a sweeping double spiral, the same motif found throughout Minoan art, but here it had a precision that hinted at astronomical purpose. Suddenly, a voice echoed from the shadows. "You carry what does not belong to the world of men." Eros spun around, raising the lamp. At the edge of the chamber stood a figure cloaked in white and gold. The woman stepped into the light, her face framed by cascading black hair and her eyes bright with a timeless calm. Though she looked no older than 25, there was an ancient gravity in her presence. She wore the sigils of a Minoan high priestess, spirals painted across her arms, a necklace of amber and obsidian, and a ceremonial belt shaped like entwined serpents. Eros inhaled sharply. You're one of the priestesses, but that's impossible. The Minoans vanished thousands of years ago." The woman tilted her head, her expression serene. "Time does not flow in the same way in this sanctuary. Those who serve the temple of light and shadow walk between the passing moments. We are guardians of knowledge preserved beyond the reach of destruction." He tried to steady his voice. "I found this tablet. It led me here." "Yes," she said softly. "It called to you because the temple recognizes your lineage." "My lineage?" "You are of the blood of the old scholars of Phaistos, the ones entrusted with preserving the lost scripts. You have come to complete what they could not finish." Her words struck Eros like a blow. He had always felt different, always sensed a strange familiarity in ancient sites. As a child, he had dreams of labyrinths and torch-lit halls he had never visited. His family dismissed them as imagination, but now they surged back with clarity. "How do you know who I am?" he asked. The priestess stepped closer. "Because the temple has waited for you, and because I was appointed to guide the one who would unlock the star script." He swallowed. "Star script? Is that what these symbols are?" The priestess nodded. "They record our understanding of the heavens, the cycles of the sun and moon, the paths of comets and the tides of the earth. The Minoans studied patterns that shaped the fate of our civilization. But the star script is more than astronomy. It speaks of the balance of light and shadow, the forces that maintain harmony between nature and humankind." "So this knowledge was lost when the civilization fell?" "Not lost," she said, eyes meeting his. "Protected, hidden from those who would misuse it." She gestured for him to follow her. Eros hesitated, but then stepped beside her as she led him to the double spiral platform. "This chamber," she explained, "amplifies the light of the sun and moon. When beams enter through the openings at the peak of the mountain, they trace patterns through the channels on the floor. The spirals reveal messages that only the star script can interpret."
Eros examined the platform more closely. The channels were shallow, almost unnoticeable unless viewed from above. He imagined sunlight pouring in, turning the floor into a glowing map. "Your ancestors knew this," the priestess said. "They served as astronomer scribes. But when catastrophe approached, when the great quakes and waves threatened Crete, they hid their knowledge in tablets like the one you carry." Eros removed the clay tablet from his tunic. The priestess
brushed her fingers lightly across it, and the carving seemed to shimmer. "This one," she whispered, "is the missing key." They stepped onto the platform. The priestess positioned the tablet at a small indentation carved into the stone. Suddenly, the entire chamber vibrated with a low harmonic hum. Faint beams of light began to glow from the mineral crystals in the walls, gathering and converging toward the center of the platform. Eros stared in awe as the channels lit up with radiant white lines that flowed outward in spiraling waves. "What is happening?" he asked. "The temple recognizes the key. It is awakening." The spirals brightened, projecting ghostly patterns into the air. Eros saw images, fleeting yet vivid. Ships sailing under starry skies, the sacred bull leaping ritual, labyrinthine corridors, volcanic eruptions, waves swallowing coastal towns, priests signaling across mountaintops with mirrored discs, astronomers mapping the heavens, priestesses pouring libations to the goddess beneath a crescent moon. And then, a final image, a comet streaking across the sky. The chamber darkened suddenly. The spirals vanished. The priestess placed a steadying hand on Eros's arm. "You have seen what your ancestors feared," she said. "They predicted a celestial disturbance, a comet whose passage influenced the tides and tectonic forces. It triggered the destruction that befell our civilization." Eros felt his chest tighten. So the fall of the Minoans wasn't just an accident of nature? "It was written in the stars," she said. "But the priests believe balance could be restored if humanity learned from the cycles. The star script preserves that warning." Eros frowned. "Why me? Why show me all this?" "Because the cycles return," she said gently. "The world once again approaches imbalance. You must carry this knowledge back to the surface." Eros hesitated. "If I leave, will I see you again?" The priestess stepped back, her expression distant. "My duty is bound to the temple, but the temple will guide you." She extended her hand to the tablet. It lifted from its slot, glowing faintly before settling back into Eros's hands. "Go, and remember what you saw." He turned toward the tunnel, but before he reached the entrance, he looked back over his shoulder. The priestess was already fading into the darkness, like a figure swallowed by time itself. Eros stepped out of the temple into blinding sunlight. The wind was colder now, the sky sharper. As he looked down at the valley of Crete, he realized that he carried more than a relic. He carried the
wind swept fiercely across the Cretan hilltops as Aros descended from the sacred slopes of Mount Juktas, the clay tablet warm in his palm as though alive. The memory of the priestess, her luminous eyes, her voice echoing like a hymn from another age, pulled at his mind like a tide he could not resist. What he had witnessed inside the temple of light and shadow still throbbed in his veins. Spirals of light dancing across the stone, visions of Minoan astronomers tracking celestial cycles, and the catastrophic comet that heralded the civilization's collapse. But there was something else, an unspoken message he felt deep in his bones. The star script had shown him fragments, but the whole truth remained locked behind the broken images. Something within the visions called him deeper into the heart of ancient Crete, toward a place whose name had haunted history, the Labyrinth. According to legend, the Labyrinth was not merely a prison for the Minotaur. It was a network of knowledge, an underground archive the Minoans built long before myths twisted its purpose. Many historians dismissed the Labyrinth as a metaphor, but Aros now knew better. The symbols on the tablet hinted at intersections of stone corridors, subterranean vaults, and chambers guarded not by monsters of flesh,
but by traps of time and forgotten engineering. Aros journeyed west toward Knossos, following narrow paths that wound between olive groves and dry riverbeds. The ground trembled with distant rumblings, though no clouds marred the horizon. It was the same tremor he had felt inside the temple, a reminder that Crete itself was alive, shifting with ancient memory. The island had always been a place of movement, tectonic, cultural, celestial. And now, as he approached the ruins of Knossos, the trembling seemed like the heartbeat of something waiting beneath the earth. Knossos rose like a ghost city, its ruins scattered across a vast plateau. Red pillars stood like broken ribs of a once breathing beast, frescoes faded by time, but still carrying traces of color, blues of the sea, reds of ceremonial robes, golds of the sacred bull. Tourists no longer roamed the site. A government excavation had halted months earlier due to unexplained equipment failures and a series of minor quakes that shook the region. Aros approached the fenced-off perimeter. The silence was suffocating. He walked through a gap in the fence, his footsteps crunching softly against gravel. The air smelled faintly of dust and time. He moved through the remains of the palace, storerooms with collapsed shelves, broken amphorae, and cracked stone basins that once collected sacred oils. The hall of the double axes still retained its traces of grandeur, though its walls were fractured. Aros paused before a fresco of a dancing priestess, her arms raised toward swirling shapes resembling stars. He traced a finger along the painted spiral and felt a spark surge through him. The tablet vibrated. Aros froze. The symbols on the clay seemed to shimmer subtly, responding to the spiral in the fresco. The tablet and the palace were connected by more than culture. They were part of a single system, a map or mechanism spanning the island. The priestess in the temple had said the star script was a guide. Perhaps the fresco was another key. He held the tablet up beside the wall. The spirals aligned perfectly. As the afternoon sun slanted through a broken ceiling beam, a projection of light passed over the tablet and reflected onto the fresco. The spirals glowed. The wall trembled. A low grinding sound echoed beneath his feet. Aros stumbled back. The fresco slid downward like a massive stone door sinking into the earth. Behind it yawned a dark passageway, colder than the caves of Mount Ida, and lined with smooth tiles etched with more spirals. His breath quickened. He had found the entrance to the labyrinth. He stepped inside, his oil lamp casting flickering shadows along the narrow walls. The passage descended slowly in a spiral, mirroring the shape of the Minoan double spiral symbol, the same one that had appeared in the temple. The silence deepened as he moved lower, until he could hear only his own breathing and the faint drip of water echoing in the distance. After what felt like hours, the passage opened into a vast chamber. The ceiling was carved into an immense dome, supported by curved pillars that twisted like vines frozen in time. At the center of the dome lay a circular pool of water so still it mirrored the rocky ceiling above. Aros approached cautiously. Shapes shimmered beneath the surface. Stone tablets, bronze discs, clay jars sealed with wax. It was a submerged archive. But why underwater? The answer came to him as he noticed how the water refracted the light from his lamp. The reflections formed shapes on the walls, symbols, constellations, fragments of the star script. The labyrinth was engineered to use light and water to preserve and project knowledge. The pool was not simply storage, it was a device. Eros knelt by the water. The tablet in his hands vibrated again, stronger this time. He slowly lowered it toward the pool. The water glowed as the clay touched its surface, sending ripples of light across the entire chamber. Symbols illuminated on the walls, racing around the room like a celestial clock. Images burst into view. A network of underground tunnels stretching beneath Crete. Priests walking with torches through maze-like corridors. Stone discs being positioned on pedestals. The great bull of the heavens, a constellation marking the cycle of destruction and renewal. Then, the final image, the palace of Naxos collapsing as a massive wave surged across the island. Eros felt his chest tighten. The labyrinth had recorded the fall of the Minoans. The water grew brighter until it blazed like molten silver. Suddenly, shapes rose from the pool, glimmering shadows forming the outlines of people. A priest wearing a tall headdress, a man carrying scrolls, a young woman, her arms marked with spirals. They moved like echoes trapped in the stone, reenacting scenes from the last days of the Empire. Eros stepped back, heart racing. These were not ghosts. They were memories preserved by some forgotten technology, projecting themselves through light and reflection. He watched as the priest addressed a gathering of scribes. Though the figures had no sound, Eros could sense the urgency in their gestures. One scribe unrolled a massive parchment covered with star maps. Another pointed to a small symbol near the corner, a comet approaching Earth. Panic rippled through the group as they debated with wild gestures. Then came the quake.
The chamber shook violently as stones fell from above. The scribes scrambled to protect the star script tablets, carrying them toward an inner vault. The water projection shifted once more, showing the tunnels flooding, pillars collapsing, flames devouring parts of the palace above. The Minoans had fought desperately to protect their knowledge as nature unleashed its fury. Eros lowered his head. For the first time, he felt the weight of their failure. No, not their failure, but their sacrifice. They had preserved what they could, even knowing their civilization could not survive. As he watched the last memory fade into darkness, the pool calmed, and the symbols on the walls dimmed. Yet one symbol remained, glowing faintly. A small spiral with 3 branches extending from it. Eros recognized it. It was on the back of his clay tablet. He stepped closer to the glowing symbol, and as soon as his fingers brushed it, part of the wall slid aside, revealing a narrow passage. His pulse quickened. The labyrinth was guiding him still deeper. The passage was tighter than the previous tunnels, and the air colder. Roots dangled from the ceiling like petrified snakes. The floor sloped downward, and soon Eros could hear a distant rushing sound. Wind or water, he could not tell. The corridor ended abruptly at a circular chamber with a stone pedestal at its center. Upon the pedestal lay a single bronze disc, engraved with spirals, stars, and a series of lines radiating outward like the sun. Eros approached slowly. The disc pulsed with faint light. He placed the clay tablet beside it. The disc rotated, aligning its spirals with the ones on the tablet. The entire chamber vibrated and began to glow with radiant blue light. Eros shielded his eyes as the air filled with shimmering patterns. For the first time, he heard a voice. Not a living person, but a recorded voice echoing through time.
If you have reached this chamber, then you are the true heir of the Star Keepers. You now hold what remains of our wisdom. The cycles will come again. The comet will return. The waters will rise. But knowledge can prevent destruction if it is understood in time. Eros felt his heart hammering so hard it hurt. This was a message the Minoans had sealed away for a future they hoped would exist. They had predicted not only their own fall, but future catastrophes. The voice continued. Our labyrinth holds the path to restoring balance. Follow the final corridor. You will find the chamber of the third spiral, where all paths converge. The light faded. The bronze disc locked into place. A narrow slit opened in the far wall. Eros took a deep breath and stepped through. He found himself in a massive cavern, the largest he had seen. Its ceiling soared beyond the reach of his lamp. At the center rose a colossal spiral structure carved entirely from obsidian. It twisted upward, like the shell of a cosmic creature, reflecting distorted images of Eros and the walls around him. At the base of the spiral lay hundreds of stone tablets, some intact, others broken, scattered like fallen leaves. He approached the structure. The air felt heavier here, as though saturated with ancient power. The obsidian surface pulsed faintly with inner light, and as he touched it, he felt a shock run through his body. A vision slammed into his mind. He saw the Minoan priestess from the Temple of Light and Shadow. She stood in the center of this very chamber, her arms raised, the obsidian spiral glowing behind her. She spoke to a circle of priests whose faces he could not see, their shadows stretching like elongated figures across the floor. Eros could sense their desperation. They were performing a ritual to seal the knowledge within the labyrinth before the final catastrophe struck. The priestess placed her hand on the spiral, and a beam of light shot upward, illuminating the entire chamber. She turned toward the vision, looking directly at Eros as though she could see him across time.
"Find the heart," she whispered. "Restore the cycle." The vision shattered. Eros staggered back, gasping for breath. The chamber around him dimmed, the obsidian spiral losing its glow. He looked down at the clay tablet. One of the symbols, one he had never noticed before, had begun to shine. It was a tiny triangle inside the triple spiral. The heart. He now understood there was a hidden core to the labyrinth, a final chamber containing the ultimate key to the star script. Everything he had seen, visions, symbols, projections, had been guiding him toward that single truth. He scanned the cavern until he saw a small opening near the base of the spiral. It was barely large enough to crawl through. Steeling himself, he entered the passage. The air inside was warmer. The stone walls seemed to throb faintly. After several minutes of crawling, he emerged into a spherical chamber. At the center stood a small pedestal holding a crystal the size of a fist, glowing with gentle amber light. The heart of the labyrinth. Eros approached reverently. The crystal pulsed in rhythm with his heartbeat. He held the clay tablet above it. The symbols flashed brilliantly, and the entire chamber filled with swirling light. Spirals, stars, waves, flames, all merging into a single pattern. Eros suddenly understood the star script, not as a language, but as a system of balance. It described cycles of nature, celestial events, and the hidden forces that held civilizations together. The Minoans had mastered this knowledge, and now it lived inside him. The crystal dimmed. The chamber became still. Eros knew his journey in the labyrinth was complete. But as he crawled out of the passage and stepped back into the obsidian cavern, a deep rumble shook the ground. Dust rained from the ceiling, cracks split across the floor. The labyrinth was collapsing. He ran through the tunnels, following the spirals that now glowed faintly to guide him. Rocks tumbled behind him, air rushed like the breath of a giant beast. He reached the entrance chamber just as the fresco door began to slide shut. Eros hurled himself forward. He landed on the ground outside, gasping as the fresco sealed with a thunderous finality. The ruins of Knossos trembled violently, then fell silent. Eros lay on the dusty ground, heart hammering. He had escaped, but the knowledge of the Minoans, the knowledge hidden for thousands of years, was now his burden. He rose slowly, looking back at the sealed entrance. The labyrinth was lost again, buried beneath time. Yet he carried the star script within him, and the world would soon need it.
The crimson twilight fell upon the desolate valley like a dying ember, casting a faint blood-colored glow over the cracked earth as Arthelion and his companions approached the gates of Kyle Raz. A chilling silence wrapped the ancient fortress, one so thick that even the wind seemed afraid to stir its stagnant air. The walls were built from dark obsidian stone, fused by forgotten volcanic spells, and each towering pillar was carved with glyphs that twisted like living serpents. It was here the lost lore whispered of rituals so forbidden that even the gods feared speaking of them. Rituals capable of bending the cycle of fate, time, memory, and even death itself. And now, destiny had brought Arthelion face to face with that abyss. As they passed the broken archway, Aelira felt an inexplicable tremor through her bones. The very air inside the fortress tasted metallic, as if soaked in centuries of dried blood. The corridors were narrow, built deliberately to amplify every footstep until it echoed like the pulse of a living creature. Flickering blue flames ignited on their own as they walked, illuminating murals depicting ancient rites, rituals that showcased mortals transforming into spectral entities, priests merging with celestial shadows, and kings bartering their souls for an eternity of unbroken power. Each mural seemed to shift as they looked at it, as if trying to whisper secrets directly into their minds. Arthelion's eyes narrowed as he studied the carvings. These are rites of Velarium, not meant for mortal hands. If the High Circle performed even one of these rites, the balance of the world could collapse. His voice carried the weight of dread, for he knew too well what had become of civilizations who dared to toy with such cosmic forces. The chronicles spoke of kingdoms swallowed by void storms, entire bloodlines erased from existence, and gods who wept as their creations unraveled. The lost lore was never merely legend. It was the epitaph of those who thought themselves greater than destiny. Further ahead, an immense chamber awaited them. The Dome of Echoes towered 100 meters high, its ceiling carved with spiraling constellations that twinkled as if real stars had been trapped within stone. At the center of the dome stood a massive circular altar made from crystalline onyx, its surface laced with thin cracks glowing faintly red. It pulsed in an unnatural rhythm, like a heart still beating long after its body had died. Floating above the altar was a fragment of an old prophecy, a spectral inscription repeating endlessly in an extinct dialect,
warning of the rite of summation, a ritual rumored to merge mortal will with the fabric of reality. Aelira approached the altar, her hand trembling slightly as she felt the heat radiating from it. This power, it doesn't feel divine. It feels alive, hungry. Beside her, Morvan unsheathed his blade, though he knew steel would do little against forces older than the gods themselves. Still, instinct drove him to be ready. Suddenly the chamber trembled. The lights within the constellations flickered violently as the shadows stretched unnaturally across the walls, elongating, merging and twisting, until they formed a colossal silhouette at the far end of the dome. A voice slithered into their minds, a voice that did not echo through the air, but inside their very souls. You seek the forgotten rites. You tread upon paths mortals were forbidden to walk, yet still you come, driven by desperation or ambition.
Arthelion stepped forward, forcing calm into his voice. We seek truth. We seek the origin of the rituals that corrupted the circle, and we seek a way to end what they have begun. The darkness shifted, revealing faint outlines of a humanoid figure, its body made of mist and stardust, its face a swirling void where countless eyes blinked in and out of existence. Then you seek Veltharion, the first sorcerer, the architect of forbidden rites, the one who traded mortality for omniscient suffering. As the name echoed through the chamber, a wave of oppressive energy surged through the dome. Aelira gasped, nearly collapsing under the weight of thousands of years of accumulated sorrow that flooded her mind. She saw flashes, cities burning in silver fire, temples collapsing beneath storm clouds of screaming shadows, and a lone figure chanting beneath an eclipse that should never have existed. Veltharion had not merely discovered forbidden rituals, he had forged them, using the despair of entire civilizations. The entity continued, drifting closer. The forbidden rites were never meant to be used. They were meant to imprison him, to bind the first sorcerer beyond the veil. But the circle, in their thirst for power, broke the seal. Arthelion's heart froze. Then he is awakening? Awakening, the entity laughed, a sound like stones grinding against bone. No, mortal. Veltharion has already awakened, and with each forbidden rite performed, he regains another fragment of his boundless might. The chamber seemed to inhale deeply as the shadows tightened around them. The walls pulsed with dark red light as if reacting to the presence of the ancient name. Aelira stepped back instinctively, but the darkness followed, swirling around her feet like an eager predator. Morvan raised his blade. If Veltharion has returned, then we must end him. Tell us where he is. The entity's gaze turned toward him, 1,000 whispering voices speaking at once. You cannot end what was born outside the boundaries of time. Veltharion does not dwell in one place. He dwells in every place where forbidden rites are performed. Each ritual is a doorway, each sacrifice a key. Arthelion felt a cold realization settle over him. The circle was not summoning Veltharion. They were feeding him, strengthening him, binding themselves to him through blood-soaked rites they barely understood.
and the world itself was now stitched with invisible cracks, each one a pathway through which Veltharian's influence seeped into reality. The entity drifted closer until its presence nearly smothered them. Yet there is a path, a way to sever his connection, but it demands a sacrifice greater than any ritual, a sacrifice that will alter the fate of the one who performs it. Arthelion clenched his fists. "Tell us." The entity extended its shadowed arm, pointing toward the altar of onyx. "The rite of severance must be performed at the eclipse of echoes. Only one who understands both light and shadow can perform it, but the caster will lose their existence in every timeline. They will become a forgotten echo, erased from memory, history, and even destiny itself." Eleora froze, dread creeping into her chest. Erased? As if they never lived?
The silence that followed was almost suffocating. Arthelion's breath shook, though he kept his expression steady. The wake of the choice was unbearable. Sacrifice oneself was one thing, but to vanish from every memory, every record, every life, including from the hearts of those they loved, was a fate beyond death. But before he could speak, the temple shuddered violently. The walls cracked open, bleeding streams of shadow as a deafening roar filled the dome. A vortex spiraled from the altar, tearing through the chamber like a living storm. The entity recoiled, its form dispersing into fragments of darkness. "He rises!" it screamed. "Veltharion has sensed your presence. The circle has begun the rite of convergence. You must choose now. The world will not wait." As the vortex intensified, Arthelion felt the altar pulling at him, calling him, recognizing him. It knew his bloodline, his destiny, his fate. Aelira grabbed his arm, in terror in her eyes. "Arthelion, don't! There has to be another way. There must be." But deep inside, he already knew. The lost lore had led them here for one purpose, and destiny was not granting him a choice. It was demanding a price. The chamber collapsed around them as the vortex swallowed the altar, the entity, and the constellations themselves. Shadows and starlight merged into a spiraling abyss as Arthelion stepped forward, toward sacrifice, toward oblivion. The night fell heavy over the jagged peaks of Keal Raz, cloaking the valley below in darkness thick enough to swallow sound. Arthelion stood at the summit, the wind tearing his cloak, carrying whispers of the past and the echo of forbidden rites that had consumed generations. Beside him, Aelira gripped his arm, her eyes wide with the terror of knowing what was at stake. Far below, the fortress of Keal Raz pulsed faintly with the unnatural red light that seeped from its obsidian walls, a heartbeat of shadow reverberating through the night. Somewhere deep within, Veltharion stirred, a force older than the mountains themselves, awakening fully as the final moments of the eclipse of echoes approached. Arthelion's breath came in sharp, ragged pulls. He had traversed the labyrinth, faced the echoes of forgotten sorceries, and witnessed visions that defied mortal comprehension. Yet nothing had prepared him for this, the convergence of light and shadow, where the fate of all timelines would hinge upon a single act of sacrifice. He looked to Aelira, whose hands trembled as she held the star-script tablet.
its ancient spirals glowing faintly with the wisdom of civilizations long vanished. The tablet pulsed in rhythm with the distant vibrations of Kaal-Raz, as if it too were alive and aware of the approaching moment. "The eclipse is beginning," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the wind. She pointed toward the horizon, where the moon, swollen and burning with amber hue, began its slow journey across the face of the sun. The sky ignited in a strange twilight, casting elongated shadows that twisted unnaturally across the valley. Stars flickered into existence despite the fading daylight, forming constellations that had long been hidden by human eyes, their alignments mirroring those carved into the walls of the Dome of Echoes. Arthelion felt the ground beneath his feet shift subtly, as if reality itself was bending in anticipation of what was to come. He closed his eyes, allowing the tablet to guide his thoughts. The spirals, once abstract symbols, now coalesced into patterns of profound clarity. He saw the paths of the rituals, the interconnections between time, memory, and destiny. Each spiral contained within it not only knowledge, but consequence, a matrix where every action, every sacrifice resonated through eternity. Veltharion, the first sorcerer, existed not in a single location, but throughout this matrix, a presence interwoven into every layer of reality. The High Circle had awakened him unknowingly, their greed and ambition forging pathways for his return. Arthelion opened his eyes. "We have no time. If we delay even a moment, the rite of convergence will complete. Veltharion will emerge fully, unstoppable." Illyra nodded, though fear clouded her expression. "The eclipse can only be countered at the apex of the eclipse. There is no room for hesitation. Only one of us can perform the rite of severance." Morven's hand tightened around his sword. "I will do it," he said, voice resolute. But Arthelion shook his head. "No," he replied, "it is not about strength. The star script has chosen. Its wisdom flows through me. I understand the balance. I understand the sacrifice."
Illyra's eyes filled with tears. "Arthelion, you can't! To vanish from every timeline, from every memory, it's more than death. It's oblivion."
Arthelion's gaze hardened. "And yet, if I do not act, oblivion will spread to the world. Every timeline, every life, every civilization, all will be consumed. I cannot allow that." The wind picked up, whipping around them in violent spirals as the eclipse progressed. Shadows lengthened unnaturally, curling around the mountains, forming shapes that seemed almost sentient. Veltharion's influence manifested as a palpable force, tugging at the edges of reality. The ground trembled beneath their feet, fissures appearing along the valley floor, glowing faintly red with the sorcery imbued into the stone. The very air seemed thick with despair, whispering voices of the dead and long forgotten, echoing from every corner of history. Each echo pressed against Arthelion's mind, testing his resolve. He stepped forward toward the stone altar that had been prepared at the summit, the star-script tablet held firmly in both hands. The spirals now shimmered with living light, projecting faint patterns into the air around him. He traced his fingers along the grooves, feeling the flow of energy coursing through him, binding him to the ancient wisdom of the Minoans, the labyrinth, and every civilization that had fought to preserve balance. This was the culmination of everything: the echoes, the sacrifices, the knowledge of centuries compressed into a single moment. The eclipse reached its apex, a perfect alignment where moon, sun, and stars formed a celestial spiral overhead.
Light and shadow collided in the sky, casting the valley in an otherworldly glow that seemed to suspend time itself. Veltharion's presence erupted fully from the fortress below, a torrent of shadow, fire, and cosmic energy. His form was terrifying, immense and formless, with countless eyes blinking across a body that was both everywhere and nowhere. He screamed, a sound that resonated through every living thing in the valley, shaking minds, bending stones, and cracking the very air. The rite of convergence was nearly complete. Arthelion placed the tablet upon the altar. The spirals began to rotate, emitting beams of pure energy that shot into the sky, weaving through the eclipse. The patterns projected across the heavens, intersecting with Veltharion's chaotic energy. Alira and Morvan stepped back, shielding their eyes as the power surged, the valley itself beginning to warp under the strain. Mountains twisted subtly, rivers shimmered as if flowing with liquid light, and the air pulsed with an almost unbearable intensity. The spectral entity that had first spoken to them appeared once more, hovering above the altar. The rite of severance can only be performed by one who accepts the full cost. You must give yourself wholly, knowing that all memory of you will be erased. Only then can the cycle be broken. Arthelion closed his eyes. He felt every timeline, every life, every ripple of consequence spreading outwards. If he stepped into the ritual, his existence would vanish, but the world would live. The decision was absolute. He felt the weight of the sacrifice settle like a stone in his chest, a paradoxical mix of dread and relief. He could feel Veltharion's consciousness stretching across the reality matrix, probing, seeking, consuming, but the tablet's power anchored him, allowing him to stand against the ancient sorcerer's might.
He opened his eyes, speaking aloud with the voice both steady and resolute. I accept. The moment he spoke the words, the spirals on the tablet flared into a blinding light, cascading across the altar and into the sky. The entity's form shimmered with intensity. Veltharion roared, a sound that shook the foundations of Kal Raz and sent the mountains themselves quivering. Arthelion felt his body dissolve into energy, his consciousness dispersing across the spirals of the star script. His vision expanded to encompass every timeline simultaneously, past, present, and potential futures. He could see the rise and fall of empires, the births and deaths of countless beings, the intricate patterns of cause and effect unfurling like a tapestry. The agony of erasure was overwhelming. Memories of himself, his companions, even the knowledge of his own existence began to fade from reality. He could feel the edges of consciousness fraying, yet a deep resonance remained. The star script, the wisdom of the Minoans, anchored the universe's balance. Veltharion's form began to disintegrate, strands of his essence severing from the world, dissipating like smoke caught in a gale. The vortex of chaos collapsed inward, neutralized by the rite of severance, and the eclipse began to wane. Aliera and Morvan, watching from the ridge, felt the energy wash over them. The oppressive darkness that had suffocated the valley lifted. The fortress below cracked and smoldered, but it no longer radiated the malignant power it once did. Aliera reached for Arthelion, calling his name, but felt only emptiness. No trace of his presence remained. He had ceased to exist in every record, every memory, even in Aliera's heart. And yet, the balance he had restored was tangible. Life would continue. The timelines, once threatened by Veltharion's convergence, were realigned. In the fading twilight, a faint spiral of light lingered in the sky, slowly fading into the night. It was a remnant, perhaps, of the star script, or perhaps a silent memorial to the sacrifice of the one who had given everything so the world might endure. Aliera bowed her head, tears flowing freely. Knowing she would never see Arthelion again,
yet feeling his presence in the harmony now restored. Morvan's hand rested on the hilt of his blade, silent, contemplative, understanding that the cost of survival had been absolute. The wind shifted, carrying the sense of distant oceans and the faint hum of life returning to the valley. Kal Raz lay dormant, its dark power sealed, a monument to both human ambition and sacrifice. The echoes of forbidden rites had been silenced, but their lessons endured, a reminder that power without balance invites destruction, and that wisdom often demands the ultimate price. The night stretched onward, silent for the whispers of wind through the mountains. Somewhere beyond the horizon, the cycles of time continued, subtly altered by a single vanished soul, whose courage and sacrifice ensured the survival of countless generations yet to come.
The first light of dawn crept over the horizon, spilling pale gold across the valley where Kal Raz had stood. The obsidian fortress, once a monument of dark ambition and forbidden rites, now lay in ruins, its walls fractured and inert. The echoes of Veltharion's presence dissolved into nothingness. Life breathed again into the valley as wind carried scents of wildflowers, moss, and the faint tang of rain that had fallen the night before. Aelira and Morvan emerged from the shadowed peaks, their eyes scanning the desolation below. The air felt lighter, almost as if a millennia-long weight had been lifted. Yet the absence of Arthelion, the one who had sacrificed himself to perform the rite of severance, pressed heavily on their hearts. He was gone in every memory, every record, every timeline. But the universe itself bore the mark of his courage. Aelira walked forward, her hands brushing over the shattered stones of the fortress, tracing the faint grooves of spirals that had once pulsed with malevolent energy. Each symbol was cold, lifeless, but the knowledge they carried had been preserved within the star script she still held close. The spirals seemed to hum faintly, as if responding to her touch, reminding her that wisdom can survive even when its bearers vanish. "He saved us," she whispered, voice trembling. "He truly saved us." Morvan's face remained solemn, his hand resting upon his blade, though he too understood the enormity of the sacrifice. The journey back through the valley was quiet, save for the distant call of birds and the occasional rustle of small creatures reclaiming the land. Nature itself seemed to mourn and heal simultaneously, as though acknowledging both loss and victory. As they descended toward the plains, fragments of ancient roads emerged through the grass, hints of long-lost civilizations intertwined with the ruins of Kal Raz. They had walked through echoes of history, and now the present seemed almost fragile in its simplicity. Days turned into weeks as Aelira and Morvan traveled across the lands that had been threatened by Veltharion's convergence. Each region bore scars, hints of magical ruptures, unstable terrain, echoes of shadow that had resisted dissolution. But with the rite of severance complete, these fissures slowly stabilized. The natural world seemed to realign itself, trees rooting firmly in places where shadows had once lingered, rivers carving new paths as though cleansing the land of centuries of accumulated darkness. Aelira meticulously studied the star script, deciphering its guidance and preparing to record the lessons learned for future generations. Though the tablet's knowledge was immense, it demanded understanding, patience, and respect for the cycles of existence. She knew the task would take a lifetime, yet it was a duty she could not shirk. Morvan, meanwhile, devoted himself to rebuilding. He found small villages and communities scattered across the recovering lands, teaching them not only survival, but caution, warnings about the misuse of power and the importance of balance. The people revered him as a guardian, though he carried in his heart the knowledge of what truly saved them. He never spoke of Arthelion's sacrifice directly, It was a story too vast and incomprehensible for ordinary mortals, yet its resonance guided his actions. In the quiet moments between duties, Aelira often contemplated the spiral of existence, the eternal cycle of growth, decay, and rebirth that Arthelion's sacrifice had reinforced. The Minoans, whose wisdom had seeded the star script, understood these cycles with unparalleled clarity. Their civilization, lost to time and tragedy, had nonetheless left behind keys to understanding the universe's balance. Now that knowledge lived on through her, a conduit between the vanished past and the fragile present. She could almost feel Arthelion's presence, not as a memory, for all traces had been erased, but as an energy, subtle and enduring, guiding her choices, reminding her of the responsibility she bore.
Months passed, and whispers began to spread across the lands. Stories of a vanished hero, a man whose deeds seemed more like myth than history. Aelira and Morven did not correct the tales, nor did they confirm them. The truth was too vast, too complex, and the risk of misuse too great. Instead, they guided those who sought wisdom, teaching not only knowledge, but also restraint. The world had glimpsed the horrors of unchecked ambition. The lesson had to endure. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long amber shadows across a tranquil river, Aelira stood alone on its bank. She held the star script carefully, the spirals pulsing faintly with residual energy. She murmured incantations learned from the Minoans, activating a subtle protective ward across the region. The wind picked up, carrying whispers of ancient voices, priests, scribes, astronomers, whose knowledge had persisted through millennia. She closed her eyes, feeling the resonance, feeling the cycles of life, death, and renewal spinning outward into the world. Somewhere deep within that resonance, she sensed a single faint spiral of energy, the mark of Arthelion, gone from existence, yet preserved within the very fabric of reality. Morven approached silently, resting a hand on her shoulder. "Do you feel it?" he asked. "He's still here." Aelira opened her eyes. "Not here, not in memory, but in balance. That is where he lives now." The nights grew long, and the stars above seemed clearer than ever. The constellations, once twisted and unstable during Velfarion's rise, now shone in perfect alignment, a silent testament to the realignment of the universe. The eclipse was over, but the lessons endured. Cycles of light and shadow, creation and destruction, sacrifice and continuity. The world had been tested, and it had survived, not because of gods or fate alone, but because of one mortal's understanding and ultimate surrender. Years passed, and the lands flourished once more. Forests reclaimed scarred valleys, rivers healed their courses, and civilizations grew with newfound wisdom. The tales of forbidden rites, of Kalraz, and of the enigmatic hero persisted as legends, inspiring scholars, priests, and wanderers to seek knowledge with humility. The star script, safeguarded by Aelira and her disciples, became the foundation for future generations, a guide not only to understanding the cosmos, but to navigating the delicate equilibrium between power and responsibility. In the quietest hours before dawn, Aelira would sometimes gaze at the horizon, sensing the subtle spirals of energy that connected all life.
She knew Arthelion's sacrifice had established a network of protection and balance that extended beyond what any living being could perceive. Though invisible to eyes and erased from memory, his essence flowed through time, an eternal spiral sustaining the world. She whispered his name, not for remembrance, for none could, but as acknowledgement of the unbroken continuum of sacrifice and life. And so the cycle continued. Civilizations rose, knowledge was preserved, shadows tested the strength of light, and mortals learned the lessons of humility and courage. The echoes of the vanished, the wisdom of the Minoans, and the sacrifice of Arthelion wove together into a tapestry of existence, intricate and eternal. The spiral, unending, spun onward, a reminder that even when individual lives fade into oblivion, their deeds, their understanding, and their courage shape the cosmos forever.
As the sun rose fully over the valley, casting brilliant golden light across the recovering lands, Illyra and Morvan stood together, ready to continue the work that destiny had entrusted to them. The star script pulsed softly between them, a beacon of guidance. Somewhere beyond the veil of time, in the threads of reality itself, Arthelion's sacrifice endured, a force unseen but profoundly felt. And the world, fragile yet resilient, moved forward, ever guided by the eternal spiral. The wind carried the faintest whisper through the valleys, a promise, a reminder, a legacy. Life continues, knowledge persists, balance endures, and through it all, the echoes of the vanished remain, silent but eternal.
Stay curious, stay with us. And that's the end of today's journey. The world is full of stories still untold. So if you love exploring the unknown, make sure to subscribe and stay with us, because the next discovery is just around the corner. Unraveling.